Right. I've never been starstruck by anybody gospel. I was starstruck by Aretha Franklin, and she is the one that told me less is more. She said, Lonnie, when you record, less is more so that people can sing along with you in the car. When you get in concert, that's when you do something that's worth being paid to see you do. And that has stuck with me forever. And she told me that upon meeting her. I opened for her to do something, and we were backstage. They took me back to meet her, and that's what she told me. I've never forgotten it. We did something with Patti LaBelle that was on TV, actually, and I'm so glad people can't find it anymore because I was looking crazy for real. I was backgrounding for Patti LaBelle, and she was singing, it was like a celebration of gospel or something like that, but she was singing Who's on the Lord's Side. And Patti LaBelle is notorious for not really knowing the words. And me being minister of music at that time, that would just always drive me crazy when people didn't know the words. So I'm standing in the mic, tenor and the alto and soprano, and we standing there, and she's singing this song with the wrong words. But for some reason, the camera kept showing me. And it was all over my face that this was not right. I couldn't control my face. And when that thing came on TV, all I could hear was my phone going off. People was calling me, you don't like her or something? Is it something you don't like about her? I was like, no, I love her. She's great. But they were like, the way you were looking at her was like crazy. So as far as Starstruck is concerned, I'd have to say Aretha's the only one. If I ever met Stevie, I'd be starstruck probably. If I ever met Janet Jackson, in my head, I'm married to Janet Jackson. In my head, that's my head wife. But I'll probably be starstruck if I met her. Now, I don't know how spiritual that is, what kind of realm that takes you to, but just to be real, that's who I see. Janet Jackson and Robin Givens. Those are in my head wives. You're right, right. Tour life is a lot different than people think it is. When you say tour and you see the people who are on tour, you think that we are all together all the time. And that's not the case. Let's take McDonald's for instance. If we do 3 cities, I'll come out and do the show, Donald will come out and do his piece, blah, 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 blah. But when we leave there, we're going back to the hotel or going back to our dressing room to do the next thing or whatever. It's not like we leave the stage and we're all backstage kiki and hee-hee and ha-ha and getting hoarse. We normally are just there. So people travel with their own people. So like when me and Ty were on the tour together, we already knew each other. So, you know, we would chop it up or whatever, but tour life is great if you have tour responsibility and tour, what's the word I want to use? If you can respect what you're able to do. You really have to have a thick skin to do anything in the public because people have a right to come up with whatever scenario they want to come up with, and it's up to you to be able to rise above that or let that tear you down. Because if I walked out here with in my head what I think people might be thinking, I'd never be effective. One of the things that's unique about a church like Bethany is they have several choirs. So you can assign a sound to a choir, like Disciples is what you would normally hear a community choir kind of sound like, whereas Sanctuary would do your traditional and ensemble and voices would be traditional and contemporary, but still churchy kind of stuff. A lot of places that only has one choir or just only has one praise team, it's hard to navigate all of that. But if you have that option, Like people on first Sundays know they're going to get a traditional sound in here. On second and fourth Sundays, they know that we're going to be all over the place and jumping around. You know, they just know it, so they can appreciate every genre because they know they're going to get the genre that they like at some point. And I'll be honest with you, the hardest thing for me to do here was when we shifted, not when we shifted, but the industry shifted into more worship music. That was not my thing. It just was not something that I did. So it took me as the leader a while to shift it in my head, to hear chords differently, to hear structures differently, not to have the big swell of the music that normally gospel has, and just to ride that wave. So I had to come to grips with what I could do with that. So praise and worship, doing that like I do it here, you never would have even paid me to do that, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, because I just didn't know how. So that has stretched me to be able to do it and still stay relevant to what the sound of the industry is, what the sound of gospel music is right now, to be effective for the people.
As you get older, how do you maintain the flexibility? A lot of people, when they get older, they're like, nah, I'm set my ways. So, kind of.
One of the things that you have to do as you age is look at, honestly, what works and what doesn't work for you. So if there's something that doesn't work for me, but there is somebody here that it works for, I don't have to be the one that's doing it. So like on Wednesday nights, the praise team that leads Wednesday night Bible study, I'm not on that. I put it together. But if you feel like you have to be the one that's out front all the time because it's you, you'll find yourself in a space to where, number one, you're burnt out at the church. Number two, people are tired of hearing you. And number three, you're in a realm where sometimes you don't fit. So it looks crazy. A leader has to know how to navigate his people so well that the audience never knows what your weakness is. Because up here, whether you're up here or not, it's still strength. You know what I'm saying? So for ministers of music to always think that the reason why the choir is declining or the membership of the organization is declining is because of the membership is a disservice, which means it crosses over into your life. You must think that about yourself across the board, that everybody else is always wrong and I'm always right, and that's a dangerous place to live. The Air Force job was another fluke, just to show you when God makes something for you, it is just for you. You hear people say that a lot. I went into the Air Force. I graduated high school as a junior and spent my senior year doing basic training and training for the job for the Air Force so that I could go to college with my regular class. I was training to be a military police. And when I got out, I was going through my training in Chicago to be military police, and I was walking past a hangar and they were playing music. I stopped, of course, it grabbed my attention. I stopped just to listen. And the guy that was over the Men in Blue, which is the name of the jazz band, he said, I have to leave. I was like, well, I'm just here to, you know, check it out because I like music. And he's like, unless you can sing, you gotta go. Now this was crazy because just that week before, the guy who was the lead vocalist for the jazz band got out of the Air Force. So they were looking for somebody. I was like, I can sing. The song I sang that day was Prince, When Doves Cry. They started playing it, I was like, what? Dig, if you will, a picture of you and I engaged in a kiss. And from then on, they took my job as military police, changed it. And for the next 8 years, I was the lead vocalist for the Air Force Jazz Band. The only thing I did in the Air Force was sing. I traveled the whole world, got to see stuff I would never be able to see. And the only thing I was doing was lead vocalist, USO shows and all of that kind of stuff. And it was just odd to me because the stuff I really should have been pursuing, I didn't even know existed. Who knew that there was a job in the Air Force to sing? Who knew that? So, yeah, God is amazing at the way He just places you in a place. Because just like you were saying earlier, if you always think it's about you, I would have walked past that rehearsal thinking, oh, they ain't doing nothing, I can do better than that, and went on about my business, as opposed to stopping and changed my whole life. Submission is key when it comes to, obeying. Obedience, as the word says, obedience is better than sacrifice. But if you can't find yourself in an obedient space, the person is trying to move you into the space of your favor, you don't listen to. You know what I'm saying? Because you think you know more than them, or you think that they can't tell you what to do, whether they be older or younger than you. That's not the case. If you can hear God's voice, there is nothing that anybody would ever tell you that should be a surprise to you that comes from God. God told me this about you. If that is a complete surprise to you, then there's a disconnect there, because if you are connected to him, he speaks to you as well. So you're not going to tell me, God told me to tell you, you need to move to LA next week. Obey the word of the Lord. Well, he ain't told me that. Nor has he given me any inclination that that should be me. If that's not if that's a surprise to me, I usually won't listen to it. But normally, if it's truth, God sends people as confirmation, not as news. You know what I'm saying? As it relates to your life and what he's got for you. Yeah, that age gap is what saved my life. Because when my mom died, I was 8. My father was an alcoholic at the time. So if my sisters hadn't been as old as they were, I probably would have fallen by the wayside. They literally raised me. When my father stopped drinking, cold turkey, by the way, and never took another drink, and he died at 93. But anyway, my sister moved me out of his house because of the neighborhood we lived in, and moved me with her and her husband, which she didn't have to do, for a better school. And if we had been closer siblings in age, I wouldn't have had those opportunities to be able to escape what could have taken me in a whole nother direction, because the junior high school burned down where I lived, and they moved that school into a mall. And so these kids were going to school at a mall, and it was crazy, it was chaos. She moved me, and for the next 7th and 8th grade and all through high school, I lived with her. But all of my sisters were very instrumental in forming me into the man that I am now. Lanetta is the sister that I lived with. Denise is the middle sister, who was the R&B singer, and that's who would always make me continue to sing. And then Cherie was the younger sister, and she was the one that stepped in with my father, because we were the only 3 at home, my father, her, and me. And at 16, she was literally raising me. She cooked for me, she went shopping for me, took me to the doctor, all of that kind of stuff that a 16-year-old really shouldn't have had to do. But the dysfunction of the family at that time caused her to step up, and kudos to her, because she stepped up. And that's why I'm here today, tell you the truth. So I spoil them hugely, whatever they want. Absolutely, guys. I was spoiled coming up. I would normally never admit that, but they spoiled me. But when that thing shifted, I spoiled them. So literally whatever they want, they get from me. I can always call. I can always know the tone of the call when they do want something. But the answer is always yes. For somebody that's coming up in this industry, first of all, the industry is extremely saturated. So if you are coming up in it, it is extremely important that you know who you are in the industry as it relates to what you do best. Because if you don't, you will change who you are to fit what you think people want you to be. And by doing that, I become who I like, not who I am. So if I become who I like, they might as well continue to buy it from who I like, because they're already doing it. We already have this person. We already have that person. Be you, and whatever's supposed to come out of that, whatever niche you're supposed to have supposed to come out of that, it will, as long as you are not in and out of it. That's the only way you can perfect. Now, I don't mean be so staunch traditional that you can't do anything else. But when you sing a song, people should know it's you. Whether you're singing traditional or contemporary, you just have a signature sound. If Kim Burrell sings something, you know it's Kim Burrell. If Yolanda Adams sings something, you know it's Yolanda Adams. Vanessa Bell and Kim Burrell, same style, but you can tell the difference in a heartbeat. That's just because they stay with who they are. The best thing I can tell you is they had a show on called Sisters in the Name of Love. It was Patti LaBelle, Gladys Knight, and Dionne Warwick. Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight did a duet. You would never think to put the two of them together because of their styles in the same song. Gladys didn't try to scream like Patti. Patti didn't try to be sultry like Gladys. They stayed with who they were, but the song was phenomenal. Now, Dionne was up there at the time. And so, yeah, next question. Bless her heart, it just didn't go well. And what was crazy was they were singing her song, keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can all. And they sang circles around her to the point to where literally on stage, Dionne turned to Patti and was like, you singing my part. This was on TV. It was the way Gladys and Patti took it and made it their own. Dionne was like, I don't like it, I don't like it. No, this was several years ago, so if you want to pull it up on YouTube, Sisters in the Name of Love is the name of the show, and it was a phenomenal show, but you can see the difference between Patti and Gladys knowing exactly who they are, and Dionne just kind of... You got to see it. I promise you it'll change your life. It'll change your life. I met Bishop because he came to St. Mark. St. Mark brought him there, and that's the first time I'd ever seen him or heard him. And from then on, I think we went out to dinner. I was part of the, you know how we always go to Bishop's office to eat or whatever. Well, at St. Mark, we would take them out to eat. And that's how I got to kind of get to know him. When I came here, it was incredible, the connection that happened immediately. It wasn't a thing of, and everybody says this when they come here because he's so down to earth. He's so not the big I, little you type guy. Conversations would always be well-rounded. It was not always about, I'm your boss, you work for me, this is what I want. We have conversations about everything to the point to where we're friends. And that friendship is what carries over into the work relationship so that everything just kind of runs smoothly. I don't think we have ever had an argument. In the time that I've been here, we've never literally had an argument. And there are people who are ministers of music, friends of mine, that don't have that testimony. They are always, pastors and ministers of music are always at odds with each other. And I think one of the things that's to his credit is that he is one of the most comfortable people in his own skin that I know. He can celebrate whoever, and it doesn't take anything away from him. Pastor Jordan was the same way. And unless you are that type of leader that's so secure in your leadership, another strong guy does not make you feel any kind of intimidation. We had a guy that came here to preach, I won't say his name, came here to preach, and I was doing an interview after he preached with him, and he walked up to me, he was like, you could never be my minister of music. I was like, why? You dress too well. I couldn't believe he said it, first of all. He was dead serious, and it would blow your mind if I told you who it was, but I would never tell you. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. But he was a guy that's charismatic, and you could tell that he owns the space that he's in. So I could see what he meant, I guess, but I don't know why that would be an issue. It just kind of took me off guard. It was a life and death situation because I flew to Chicago. We were going to do a concert, Structure and I, and the flight was fine. We got off the flight, that was fine. we stopped at Denny's to eat before we went to sound check. And we ordered, and before the food came, my body just started shutting down, shaking like to the point to where the whole table and the glasses of water were shaking. I had no control. I didn't know what was going on. And they picked me up and took me to the car and called my sister. It was just by the grace of God that we were in a city that my family was in, and they knew how to navigate them to the nearest hospital. When we got to the hospital, I was in sepsis shock. And the doctor said if I had waited on an ambulance to bring me to a hospital, I would have died. He said the only reason that kept you alive is because your body was is in a good enough shape. Because when you're in that type of shock, every part of your body goes to the part where the shock is, and it was because of a kidney stone. So when every part of your body comes to aid that, it leaves everything else unprotected, which is why you have no control over anything else. And he said people usually go into that and they live maybe 15 minutes. So when that was over, I had to wear this, this bag that was connected to my kidney to continue to drain it. And the bag was connected to my leg. I would tape it on my leg. The only thing that I was able to do the only reason I was able to still come to church and still direct was because at that time, the suit pants weren't Italian cut. They were wide leg. So I had this big water bottle thing taped to my leg, but you couldn't tell because the pant leg was so wide. And the only person that knew it was happening when it was happening was Bishop. Because I just needed somebody to know to watch if something happened. But I just kind of never missed a beat. The audience never knew it until the day that I told them about it. But by that time it was already off, because I hate pity. So if I had told while it was on and everybody was asking me, how are you, blah, 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 it would have driven me crazy. So I would rather the testimony come when it was already victory, so we can move on to something else. Retirement. Mm-hmm. Yeah, next 10 years, I plan to be in the same space as this pandemic has me. At home, chilling, going out when I want to go out, working when I want to work. I will always do music because that's hobby. I will probably always do radio because that's hobby-like stuff. So stuff that doesn't feel like work, I'll probably still do, but it will be because I just want to do it. Yeah, I will be in a warmer climate. Winter would be a thing of the past. Yeah. Until we got a tsunami or something, then I'd move right on back to Chicago. Yeah, I would just say to you that in this time, in this season where we are shut down, where we are at home, make use of the time. It's one thing to be at home and hate that you're at home and do nothing. It's another thing to look at this as an opportunity to do something that you have not had time to do because of work and everything else that you've had to do. So there are books yet to be written that should be written right now. There are songs and plays and movies, all of that that's in you to get done. I would say this is the time to take the steps to study up on what it is that you want to do, so that when we come out of this, you come out of this better, bigger, stronger, wiser, and not just fatter. You just come out in a better place, in a place of favor, ready to take this world by storm, because it's in you. I can't do what you do. You can't do what I do, but unless you do it, trust me, God will find some kind of way to get it done. And right now, it's in you. So go ahead and get it done.